Two of the founders of That Porcupine Noodle Bar are Brie Thompson and Peter Beard. They share with us the origins of the name, why they all decided to relocate to La Crosse, Wisconsin, what their philosophy is with food, and how they are moving forward with a brand new restaurant in a pandemic. I'm Amy, and he's Brent, and this is La Crosse Local.
My name is Peter Beard. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I guess I've always been into food. I remember growing up helping my mom in the kitchen. My first real jobs was washing dishes and bussing tables in a restaurant. I've had one foot in the restaurant industry for a very long time. Kind of second nature to me.
I also agree with that sentiment. I was born in Washington State, but grew up in Apple Valley, Minnesota, which is a suburb of the Twin Cities. And yeah, I grew up planting gardens and really liking the kind of theatrical elements of putting on a dinner for people. So I would always make my mom like a gourmet dinner, and like set it all out and have a menu and everything. And she did it for us when we were growing up too. She would always like print up little menus and we would order from them, even though it was just one option, but just like the idea of like being in a restaurant setting or like having this, like someone take care of you and having this offering has kind of been a playful part of my life. Before college, I became vegan. And so that was like a huge deal. And I really was like dedicated to not being a vegan who just ate meat analogs. So I really got interested in like finding new things to cook. And that was like my real like entry into cooking for myself. And then from there it was, I guess like in the industry, being a baker sometimes in restaurants that I worked at. And we do have two other team members who are not with us right now, and they are very crucial to the story. So actually my husband is the chef. His name is Dustin Thompson.
My partner's name is Zoa Ryan, really tied to the hospitality aspect. And so Zoa's relationship to food is definitely centered around like the people.
When the word on the street that there was a new noodle bar happening, people are generally just very excited about having a new restaurant of this kind. What was the impetus for, the noodle bar or inspiration?
The first thing was that we moved to La Crosse. We were all living in Minneapolis. All had like progressed to the various like heights within the restaurant industry, general manager, wine director, chef. And had always, at least to speak for myself and Dustin, had always wanted to open our own restaurant. And it just kind of felt like the time had come. And we were looking around for buildings in Minneapolis and just weren't really finding anything that we were jiving with. And the prices of everything in Minneapolis had really skyrocketed in the last couple of years. And so we're like, gosh, is it even feasible for us right now? Do we stay here? Do we try to do that? Or do we, realize that we're not necessarily tethered to this one community and look elsewhere? Throughout his culinary career, Dustin has bought food from this region for forever, farms in Vernon County, farms, nearby in the driftless part of Minnesota. Locality of food and the distance food travels and really supporting local farms is something that has always been important to us. And that was definitely one of the reasons why we came to La Crosse, is that it is such an epicenter, so much closer to the food that we were already buying. And then also a friend of ours had moved here, just like, hey, you should come check it out. It's beautiful. So we came out here, checked it out, drove out the county roads, and we're like, we could see ourselves like living in the woods and being able to drive like 20 minutes into town and have a restaurant. Like, that sounds great. Like, let's do that. Started dreaming about what that restaurant would look like. And the initial restaurant that we actually were hoping to open here was an oyster bar. And so wanting to have something like sparkly and light and fun and like totally different was, and still is, a desire for us. We met Kay, who works at Dale's Clothing, and she's kind of this great community connector. And it was like, you know what, you should look at this space that Dale has over here. It's a historic, beautiful building. And walked into the space, we're like, wow, this is really beautiful. We could really see something happening here, but it's not an oyster bar. So what is it? Who are we to just open an oyster bar? That'd be ridiculous. Maybe this noodle bar is like the thing.
Where did the name come about?
I guess I could speak to that. Originally, it was free association type exercise of just like, I don't know, we got a couple of beers, we're like hanging out, what are some animals and adjectives and smashing them together. But then as we like landed on it, we kind of like the ring of it. We were like, God, that sounds like, it's weird. I don't know, it like conjures something like funny and like irreverent and strange. And that's like totally, who we all are. And then we started like researching porcupines more. We're like, porcupines are weird and crazy. Like they sharpen their teeth with bones, like their quills are like have antimicrobial properties because they fall out of trees and impale themselves so often. Like they've developed this natural healing ability. So like all this like weird stuff. But then the biggest and kind of cheesiest part of it was that we stumbled on the parable of the porcupine. And that really spoke to all of us. So basically the story goes, the porcupines were huddled together for warmth in the winter. And of course, they were pricking each other and it was really uncomfortable. And they're like, gosh, it would just be so much easier if we just went our separate ways, we wouldn't poke each other, we wouldn't hurt each other. It would be great. So let's just go our separate ways. And so they did. And of course they're all alone and they're lonely and they're cold and they're starving because they don't have the group mentality anymore. And they're like, this really sucks being alone. Like it was actually a little bit better when we were like huddled together for warmth, but we were, pricking each other. So there's like this idea of like, it can hurt sometimes, being so close to people, but it's ultimately better to be together. And so we thought that a fat porcupine was a porcupine with friends. Yeah, it fit. It seemed like us.
I just think that the analogy of the porcupines poking each other, but it's better to be together. It's a good analogy for four friends who opened a restaurant.
You change your menu a lot on a regular basis, and it seems to be like you're using, like you said, quality, local ingredients. Why is that so important to you to use those?
I could speak for all of us probably in that we are very passionate about the environment and just the world at large and our place in it. Believe that our monetary decisions are extremely important, and so have always sought to put our money where our values are, really support local farms as much as we can. And so that does mean, a changing menu throughout the season. It means in the wintertime getting really creative with what you have to offer. We were serving a lot of stored vegetables. Our initial opening, we had, celery root on the menu and parsnips and things like that, where like the farmers have them, and they're storing them because they last, in their cellars and things like that. And so like really thinking about how to craft a menu that highlights the ebb and flow of seasonality, and a lot of what we're going to do, or what we have been doing, is fermentation and preservation of the season, so that'll come out through our menu. We're kind of developing that pantry of goods, it's like, okay, so we have these, we've got these mushrooms, like, what are we going to do to preserve the harvest? How are we going to be able to like serve this thing as long as we can, and remind people, what was so beautiful and ephemeral in this one part of the season. So it's about using it when it's fresh, but it's also about like thinking about how you can preserve it. We start with the raw ingredients and then work backwards from there. Like, how do we highlight this one thing? From a chef perspective, the closer the food is to you, the fresher the food is, the greater it's going to be on the plate. That's just a fact.
And how was the public's initial response? I've been there a handful of times, but that initial, were people excited about it?
Yeah, I think everybody was. The people who came in who were not from La Crosse got it instantly. They got what we were going for, and they were really excited to see something like what we were doing. And it is a weird space with these weird light pillars and everything going on. And I think people really were pumped to see something different. And then for the people who were maybe a little bit more unsure, I know that there was some confusion over whether we were a Noodles and Company. And so there were some people who came in and were like, whoa, this was not what I was expecting at all. However, by the end of the experience, they were like, oh, this was really cool. I'm glad I came in. It was almost like we had to push them a little bit outside of their comfort zone, just a little bit. But luckily, it paid off. I'd say overwhelmingly, it was a positive reaction.
We've really committed. We've really doubled down on like what we're doing, you know, our aesthetic. We're like a Blade Runner influenced design concept. You know, we are a ramen shop with like very, you know, flavorful ingredients. We're a very opinionated and value-driven business owners that are not afraid to speak about it, love it or hate it kind of thing. So hopefully more people love it than hate it.
Yeah, I would say there have been very few like lukewarm reactions.
Yeah.
Nobody's kind of just like, oh, you know, it was that thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's either like, oh, this is great or not my thing. So
Yeah.
that's fine. I'd rather be there than a little bit of everything for everybody.
Yeah.
You're very active on social media. You're still doing your thing. What's next for Fat Porcupine?
I wish I could answer that with any kind of certainty, but we've had to reconceptualize our business model 3-4 times. I wish I could say I know what's next. I mean, it changes so quickly that right as soon as we go, okay, I think we figured it out, we're going to ride this for a while. A week later, something else happens and we're like, okay, time for a new plan. Hopefully we're in a little bit of stasis with what we're offering right now so people can get their heads around it and understand like, oh, this is what they're doing. And there's enough change within that, the rotating menu side of things, that it'll stay fresh.
That totally speaks to hanging on the honesty tree where we are. But I think that one thing that we know for sure is that we are for creative people who, when we put our heads together, we can problem solve and figure things out.
We started doing lunch, and at the beginning of the restaurant, we were like, we're not doing lunch. We don't want to do lunch anymore. We're not doing it. We've all worked it too many years. No lunch, no brunch. Well, we did a take and make Mother's Day brunch, and now we do lunch. So who's to say what the future holds? I have no idea.
Where can people find out more about the Fat Porcupine?
Best is our website, Instagram, and Facebook. Those are the three, I'd say, like, easiest ways to get information about us. And there are about 4 pages of FAQs on our website.
Right.
They've just grown over the pandemic. So if you want to know anything about any of our services,
we tried to answer them all.
There, yeah.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Locals. Subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.